Hello, this is the first session of the Caregiver TLC workshop. This is a makeup recording, so you probably haven't attended the session with your facilitator yet. If you have on hand any of the handouts that go with this session, please go ahead and pull those out now. If you do not have them, please feel free to go ahead and just grab pen and paper. So everything that we're going to do today is able just to use pen and paper. We don't have to use the specific handouts. That said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so our topics today. We're going to be talking about stress and specifically how caregiving affects stress. We're also going to be talking about how to recognize your own unique signals that you're experiencing stress. And then finally, we're going to offer 2 different relaxation skills or tools that you can use to address chronic stress in your life. So let's go ahead and jump right in on our first topic. Caring for another person over a long period of time can take a toll on your physical and emotional state. Research has shown that caregivers face unique challenges that often increase stress, whether it is the length of the time that you're being a caregiver, could be the huge range of tasks that are performed, from addressing increasingly complex medical needs to the daily personal tasks like bathing or toileting, to the sometimes awkward and confusing role changes that happen over time when you need to provide care for someone that you've always considered the person that cares for you. When stress is excessive and extended, it can be very damaging. Chronic stress over time can impact your health and well-being. Since you're caring for someone at home right now, it's especially important for you to pay attention to your physical and emotional health. While this workshop can't take away all of the challenges of caregiving, you can take steps to manage stressful situations in a way that's healthier for you. So let's talk about stress. Stress is a biological response to threat, a primitive response. Any perceived threat, physical, emotional, or mental, can start a cascading effect, which really means a lot of things happen very fast. So let's take a moment and slow down what actually happens. So your body or your mind perceives a threat. Now, this can be something that's physical, meaning someone's about to hit you. It can be something emotional. Maybe somebody has said something that hurts you. Or it can be mental. Maybe you just feel overwhelmed by the amount of things that are on your plate right now. All of these things are perceived as a threat by your mind. When your mind sees these things or perceives these things, it sets a whole bunch of cascading hormones into play. And these end up releasing a hormone called adrenaline and cortisol. So if you know anything about stress, you know that those two really play a heavy part in what follows next. So in response to these hormones, you breathe faster. And this increases the oxygen levels in your blood. And in response to that higher level of oxygen, your heartbeat increases. And your blood vessels constrict, and these two together divert that oxygen-enriched blood to your larger muscles. As a result, your blood pressure rises, and your liver produces extra glucose to give your body a boost of energy. Your digestive tract is also interrupted because your body perceives it has more important things to do. Your muscles tighten, and that can minimize damage in case of injury. When the perceived threat is over, there's a gland in your brain called the hypothalamus, and that will send a message to your brain telling everything just to stand down, things are returning to normal, whatever the threat is over. Sometimes you hear this series of reactions called a fight or flight response, meaning you're either preparing your body to fight or you're preparing to run away from whatever the threat is. And like I mentioned in the beginning, this is a very primitive response. And our body has a method of reacting to these to put us in a safe place and get away from whatever the threat is. Now, interestingly enough, acute stress is over quickly, right? So an event happens, your body perceives the threat, it goes through those series of things that we just discussed, and then at the end, your body says, okay, we've dealt with it, everything is cool again, no worries, we're back to normal. However, chronic stress occurs when your system believes it's under a constant threat, and it never really gets that message to stand down and return to normal. So why is this important? Well, research has shown us that a person who is chronically stressed is affected throughout their system in very specific ways. Stress has consequences. Chronic stress does. It can take away from your quality of life by lowering your ability to experience pleasure or perhaps a sense of accomplishment. It can also affect your ability to provide the best care that you can. Chronic stress, the consequences of chronic stress affects us physically, psychologically, and socially. Let's talk a little bit more about those. Physically, we know these consequences of chronic stress tend to be health related. Individuals who have a long-term chronic stress that's untreated are at a higher risk for high blood pressure. They're at a higher risk for heart problems, like cardiovascular issues. They're also at a higher risk for an increased chance to catch colds and flus because chronic stress suppresses the immune system. Psychologically, we know chronic stress affects emotional and mental health. So caregivers who have untreated chronic stress are at a higher risk for depression and anxiety. They're at a higher risk for responding with anger and irritation. We see changes in appetite, sleep problems. What do I mean by sleep problems? Well, perhaps you're finding it difficult to fall asleep, right? It's taking you a long time. Or perhaps you wake up in the middle of the night and you cannot fall back asleep. You lay there for hours. Maybe you're waking up super early, much earlier than you normally would. All of those are sleep problems that can be caused by chronic stress. We know individuals who've been experiencing chronic stress for a long time report a significant lack of energy or fatigue. And for those where it's gone on for a very long time, we know that they can express a sense of hopelessness or helplessness. Maybe you may find yourself saying things like, there's nothing I can do to make things better, right? And that's that psychological effect of chronic stress. We know chronic stress affects us socially, and that's seen in relationships to others. We know caregiving often challenges friendships and relationships, and as the stress builds up, some caregivers feel like they may be a burden on those relationships. They may withdraw or isolate, and in turn, this increases loneliness. Friends and family may drift away over time because of this cascading effect of you feel like a burden, so you don't want to impose on them. They ask if they can help, and you say, no, I've got it, I'm okay. And eventually you only ask so many times before, they just stop asking. Why these consequences may seem inevitable. There are tools that you can use to prevent or address many of the issues that result from chronic stress. But before we start talking about the tools and skills that you can use, we really want you to spend a moment and to start to recognize your own unique stress signs. Like the proverbial frog in a pot of water that's slowly heating to boil, many times chronic stress just creeps up on us. We don't know when to get out of the pot, right? What used to be stressful before you were a caregiver now doesn't even register, right? We don't really have a calm status anymore. We're always either mildly or moderately stressed. And it's only in those peak times do we note that we're stressed now. The first step in reducing stress is to know when you're experiencing it. Stress can show up in the body and sometimes in an unexpected way. It's important for you to recognize your own unique physical signs or mental signs when you're stressed. So if you take a look at the screen, what you'll see is a list of items that are checkboxes. If you have printed out the handout, one of our handouts also have these checkboxes on. You don't necessarily have to have the handout there. You can grab a pen and paper. So why is it important to know your own unique stress signs? Well, the things that we're going to suggest, the tools that we're going to ask you to use, those are heavily reliant on you using them earlier in the process. So if you think about it as a continuum or as a ongoing path, right? When you're calm, you're on one side. When you're super stressed, you're on the other. Most of the tools work well when you're mildly to maybe slightly moderately stressed. So if you can recognize through maybe physical signs in your body, or perhaps it's a mental state that you're in, or an emotional state, if you can figure out where you are on that continuum, you're going to know when best to use these tools. So take a look at the items that are up here, right? Physically, some people react to stress perhaps by clenching your jaw, and you know that because you're really tense in here along your jaw. Maybe you grind your teeth. Maybe you hold all your tension along your shoulders, and your shoulders are always kind of tense and up. So if you take a moment and you tell yourself, drop my shoulders, relax, you may actually feel a sense of relaxation just by doing that. Some people feel overall tension in their body, right? They complain about body aches later because your body is not, your muscles aren't used to being constantly held in a strong tension. Some people report feeling dizzy, maybe faint, maybe they feel like they're going to faint. People can report things like ringing in their ears or buzzing. Maybe you blush, right? Your face feels really hot. Some people cry, right? They may have cold or sweaty hands or feet. Some people clench their fists when they get super stressed out. They may have a dry mouth. Some people react with goosebumps over a long time or a long period. They may report things like increased amount of heartburn, stomach pain. They may feel a little nauseous. Some people report difficult taking a full breath, right? They even report frequent sighing, right? They may experience chest pain. People call it palpitations or a rapid pulse. All of these different physical reactions may be attributed to stress or chronic stress. We also might react emotionally or mentally. We see increased amounts of sadness, apathy, which is really just that I just don't care, right? I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like talking to you. I just don't care anymore. That's apathy. They may see increased levels of anxiety, or they may be worrying just about everything, or just a lot of worry. Some people report being more irritable and maybe even more angry. May have trouble concentrating. I just can't think right now. There's too much going on. I just can't deal with it. I can't think. Sometimes they report coping in ways that are not very helpful, right? During the pandemic, there were a lot of reports of people drinking a lot more, having an extra glass of wine or two, or maybe a half bottle. Maybe you once have decided you quit smoking and now you find yourself reaching for the pack of cigarettes again, or maybe adding more cigarettes than you normally would. So there are ways that you can cope with these stress to try and keep yourself calm that aren't really very helpful for your physical health. So what I'd like you to do over the next week is really pay attention to your own unique stress signs. Everybody reacts to stress in different ways. You may have only one or two of these signs. You may have a whole bunch of them. It's important to note when you're first feeling stressed, what are those signals in your body? Because like the frog, you may not remember what it's like to be not stressed. So you may feel a constant level of tension in your body, and that's how you know you're stressed right now. For you, it's just day in, day out. This is normal for me. But if you consciously pay attention to the stress you're experiencing, you can find these signals in your body. And it's also going to be one way that you know that the tools that we're going to suggest later actually work. So if you can alleviate some of these stress signals, then you know they're really being helpful. So over this next week, check it off, right? Which one of these are yours? And if you can remember which ones come first and which ones follow, that can be very helpful as well. So let's go on and let's talk about our first tool that we're going to talk about. And that's deep breathing. Excuse me. Research has shown us that deep breathing is one of the best ways to lower stress. There's a lot of science behind this. Regular breathing is automatic, right? You don't have to think about breathing. However, deep breathing gives you an opportunity to control the breath cycle to reduce your stress. If you think about the first thing that happens when your mind perceives threat, the first actual reaction, right? You get those release of hormones. First thing they do, they make you breathe faster to increase that oxygen level in your blood. Well, you cannot breathe faster and breathe slower at the same time. And that's why this works. It interrupts the fight and flight signals that are going through your system. Right? So it literally sends a message to your body to counteract the threat and that it's okay to be relaxed and calm. By slowing down your breathing, your heart rate and your breathing will also slow. And it gives you space to respond rather than react. So what am I talking about there? Right? If you think about the last time you were stressed out and you just reacted, you may have said something or done something that later, when you think about it, you really wish you hadn't because it made things worse. Or maybe you reacted in a way that if you had stepped back and thought about it, you probably wouldn't have done it. Right? You may have said something or done something that you kind of regret. Taking 10 deep breaths gives you that space to respond, which means it allows you to think about what's happening. right? It allows you to tell yourself it's not the person that I'm caring for deliberately trying to manipulate me, it's the disease. And by thinking of it as the disease, that gives you space to be more compassionate in your response and more thoughtful in your response. So in a moment, we're going to try out an exercise in session. But first, I want to take a moment and talk about daily practice. To become something that you use in a crisis moment, you really need to practice it while you're calm, right? And that way, it gives it time to become second nature. You don't have to think about any of the individual components of what makes deep breathing work. You just do it because you've already done all of that stuff ahead of time. So we're going to recommend a daily practice of taking 10 slow, deep breaths. It really should take no longer than a minute, maybe a minute and 10 seconds. The more you practice while you're calm, the more comfortable you are in using the skill. The more comfortable you are in using the skill, the more likely you're going to be to actually use it when you notice that you're stressed. So before we get started, I want to talk to you a little bit about the actual physical issue of deep breathing. Not everybody is comfortable deep breathing. So I'm going to ask you to breathe in slowly for a count of 5, pause for a moment, then breathe out for a count of 5 and pause. And we're going to do 10 of these breath cycles. Now, if you have breathing problems, like asthma, could be a bad allergy season, you could have COPD, or perhaps any other health conditions that make you uncomfortable doing deep breaths, don't push yourself to do this. While we're doing the exercise, you can just become aware of your breath. You don't actually have to push to deepen it. And of course, for everyone, if you get lightheaded as you do this deep breathing exercise, stop immediately and return to your normal breathing pattern until you stop feeling lightheaded, right? If while we're doing a count of 5, you find yourself gasping at 5, feel free to shorten it to a count of 4 or a count of 3 where you're more comfortable. The idea is we want to slow down your breathing. And if you tend to be a fairly shallow breather, it may be difficult for you at first to reach that count of 5. That's okay. Modify it, work where you're comfortable, and slowly grow into the count of 5 as you practice. Okay, so that all said, let's go ahead and get started. So this is our deep breathing guide. You have a copy of this in your handouts. Reminder that the goal here is to give you space to respond rather than react. I'm going to go over all 5 steps. Then we're going to do the exercise together, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about it at the end. I'll give you an opportunity to think about what happened. So our first step is to watch. What do I mean by that? We're just going to get comfortable. You're going to close your eyes. Maybe if you're uncomfortable closing your eyes, you find one part on a wall, some spot that you stare at. And I just want you to feel your breaths for a breath or two, right? Just become aware of your breathing. Don't try and change it. You just become aware of it. The next step is we're going to slow it down. So I'm going to have you breathe in through your nose for a count of 5. We're going to pause for a moment, and then you're going to breathe out through your mouth for a count of 5. You're going to pause for a moment. We're going to do 10 of these cycles. Our third step is I want to encourage you to make that breath deep. So what do I mean by deep? Well, between your lungs and your stomach, there is a muscle called a diaphragm, right? And your diaphragm supports your lungs as they breathe. When you take a deep breath, your diaphragm kind of goes down a little bit into your abdomen to give your lungs enough room to expand. As your diaphragm pushes down, your stomach should push out, right? As you breathe in, Your diaphragm pushes up to help your lungs, like squeeze it a little bit and kind of make it a smaller space so you can get rid of all the air that's in your lungs. You fully exhale. That makes your stomach constrict or to contract. As we age, you know, if you've ever seen a baby breathe, a baby's tummy goes up and down, not their chest. As we age, we tend to breathe more and more shallower, right? So it's just our chest going up and down. If you, right now, you put a hand on your chest, put a hand on your stomach, and you just breathe normally, for a lot of us, if we're not breathing deep, it's the hand on our chest going up and down. When you take a deep breath, and you can do that now, you'll find that your stomach expands. And then when you breathe out, your stomach contracts. That's how you know that you're breathing deep. So while we're doing this exercise, if you're not quite sure if you're taking a deep breath, go ahead and put your hand on your stomach. And you should feel it expand when you take a breath and contract when you breathe out. 10 breaths seems like forever when you're doing it, even though it's only a minute and a few seconds. So if you're having difficulties focusing, or maybe counting just doesn't do it for you, right? You find yourself forgetting where you are in the count and it just doesn't work, then go ahead and use a word, right? You might think of calm as you breathe in, like you're breathing in calm and you're breathing out relaxation, right? You're letting go of the tension as you breathe out. So you can pick 2 words that work for you. You can just think calm, relax, calm, relax. So if that works better for you than counting, by all means, go ahead and use that, right? It's something you can experiment with as you do your daily breathing. The 5th thing is I'm going to heavily encourage you to practice every day. Find 1 minute in your day where you can take 10 breaths. And we're going to talk more about that at the very end of our session when we're talking about how do you integrate these skills into your life. So having said that, let's go ahead and let's get started in our exercise. What I want you to do is get comfortable in your seat. So go ahead and do your little wiggles, put both feet flat on the floor. Rest your arms somehow, whether it's on and, in your lap, you can put one hand on your stomach, just so that you can relax and not have to support anything. I want you to put your shoulders over your hip bones. And we do that because that lengthens your torso and gives your lungs a little bit more room to expand. A lot of times when we're over the computer or maybe looking at our phone, we tend to hunch and crunch down. So I'm going to ask you to straighten up, kind of put your shoulders over your hips and get comfortable. Okay, go ahead and close your eyes or find a place on the wall to go ahead and stare at. Go ahead and just feel your breath for a couple breaths. Okay. I'm going to have you breathe in through your nose for a count of 5. We're going to pause and then breathe out through your mouth for a count of 5. And we're going to do this 10 times. Ready? Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. Breathe out. 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 Okay, you've done 10 breaths. Take a moment. Come on back to the room. Open your eyes. I want you to think for a moment. What was this experience like for you? Did you find yourself a little less stressed? Maybe a little less tense? Did you note any physical changes? Maybe your shoulders dropped a little bit. Maybe your jaw unclenched a little bit. Think for a moment. Can you visualize or think of any specific event when this technique might have been helpful during a stressful caregiving situation? So I'm going to remind you that it's important to practice every day. As you can see, it only took a moment of time. And it's really important. You do not want to have to stop in a crisis moment and go, was that a count of 5 or was that a count of 4? Maybe it was 3. Should I pause before? Should I pause after? How many breaths should I take? All of this stuff, if you practice every day, it becomes second nature, right? How do I tell if it's deep or not? If you take a moment and you practice it every day while things are calm in a crisis moment, it's going to give you that ability then to go ahead and use it with confidence. So that said, let's go on to our next tool. So visualization, sometimes called guided imagery, it's another way to help you to take a break from stress. It involves the step-by-step method of imagining yourself in a peaceful and safe place where you feel relaxed, happy, and secure. It can be combined with deep breathing, which was the exercise we just did, or something called progressive muscle relaxation techniques, which is literally where you start at the top of your head and you go muscle group by muscle group, and you relax them deliberately and consciously until you get to your feet. All of this can put you in a right frame of mind and give you the ability to focus on the visualization. They're not required, but they can be used if you already have a practice. You can move right from that into visualization. The aim here is that you're going to learn to associate that peaceful, calm feeling with the image in your head. Eventually, after practice, your brain will use that image as a signal that it's time to be calm and relaxed. Like deep breathing, daily practice is the key for success. For this practice, it's vital. Right? It's only through repetition does your mind learn to associate whatever image you're using with that feeling of being calm, relaxed, and peaceful. This is best used during an uninterrupted moment, which can be hard to find. Some caregivers report that they do their visualization exercise just before bed, as it can be helpful to put them in a relaxed state so that they can fall asleep. What I'm going to ask you to do now is think about where you could go, what image that you want to use. Take a moment, pick out an image to work with for this exercise. This doesn't have to be your permanent one. I mean, if you try out the beach and you find that you can't really visualize it very well, you'd rather be in the mountains, that's fine. If you're peaceful and calm and relaxed means you're up and moving and hiking on a trail somewhere, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a place where you're stopped and still. Everybody has different places that they find relaxing. If your idea of relaxing is surfing, that's fine. Then picture yourself on a surfboard. The idea here is that we want to take a snapshot and we want to make it as real to you as possible. That means that in our visualization exercise, I'm going to ask you to fill in the colors. And I want you to think of all of the colors, right? What color is the sky? What color is the ground? What color are the things that are around you? If you're in a room somewhere, maybe you're in a library, what color is the room around you? What colors do you see? What sounds do you hear? Maybe you don't hear anything. Maybe your peaceful, calm place is a place that is filled with silence, and that is fine. What I want you to do is really think about, what you need to do to make this real. I'm going to ask you about, what do you smell, right? If you're by the ocean, what does it smell like where you are? Are there fragrant flowers? Does it smell green? Do you smell like leaves and grass? Do you smell the brine of an ocean? Maybe there's other scents. Maybe you're sitting in a comfortable chair in front of a fireplace with a book in your lap and you're petting a cat, right? Do you smell the scent of the fireplace? Do you smell the book? Do you smell the scent of the leather of what you're sitting on? Do you see what I'm doing here? I want you to think about and really flesh out the place that you're creating. Do you feel any sensations on your skin? Is there a breeze? Is the breeze warm? Is it cooling? What does the ground feel like? Is it soft, like you're walking on sand? Is the sand warm? Is it hard, like you're walking along a path along the forest? Perhaps you're standing on tile and it's cool and comforting to your feet. You can really flesh out the world so it's like you're there. And that's the goal here. And then as you're there, right, as you're relaxing, and you do this time after time after time, eventually you're just going to have to picture that scene. And your body's going to be like, oh yeah, I remember. And then you're going to relax. That's our goal here. So as we go through this visualization exercise, there are going to be periods where there is silence. And they last for about 25 to 30 seconds. And it's going to feel like a long time, and that's okay. That's going to give you space to do whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing in that moment. Whether it's starting to feel relaxed, whether it's figuring out what the colors are around you, whether it's listening for sounds and populating your image with sounds. I don't want you to worry if you don't hear anything. It doesn't mean that we've lost contact. I will let you know when the exercise ends. So just be comfortable in following the direction of my voice to make your image to be as real as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. I want you to sit comfortably in your chair and close your eyes. Just become aware of your breath. the tension in your body, which with each breath out, I want you to release that tension. Imagine a place where you can feel calm, peaceful, and safe. It may be a place you've been to before, somewhere you've dreamt about going, or maybe somewhere you've seen a picture of. Think about that place now. Focus on the colors in your peaceful, safe place. Notice the sounds that are around you, or perhaps the silence. Think about any smells that you notice there. Then focus on any skin sensations, the earth beneath you, the temperature, the movement of air, anything you can touch or that touches you. While you're in your peaceful and safe place, you might choose to give it a name, whether one word or a phrase that you can use to bring this image back anytime you need to. You can choose to linger for a while, just enjoying the peacefulness and serenity. You can leave whenever you want to, just by opening your eyes and being aware of where you are. Okay, the exercise has ended. So go ahead, open your eyes. Welcome back. So take a second or two and think about, what was this experience like for you? Did it affect your level of stress at all? Note any physical change? Do you think this would be helpful? How do you see yourself using it? These are all questions to contemplate as you work through practicing visualization. And I'm going to remind you that to really use this as intended, perhaps more than any other tool we talked about today, this one really needs you to practice it consistently and daily so that your brain has time to associate that calm, peaceful feeling that you're having right now with that image, so that you can then use the image during a moment when you're really stressed to bring back that sense of calm. Okay, so at the end of each session, we do what we call the takeaway. And the takeaway is really just a summary of 3, perhaps sometimes maybe 4 points that we really want you to kind of take away with you when you leave. The first on this session on stress is that stress really affects our lives in many ways, and some of them are unexpected. We really didn't think that the reason we're feeling this way or thinking this way or acting this way is because of stress. The second thing we hope that you take away from this is to know that everyone shows stress in different ways. And that's it. It's really important to know your own unique signals. And this will allow you to react in a timely way when you're experiencing stress, so that you can use some of these skills or tools to really use them in an effective manner. And then the final takeaway is both of the tools that we offered, or both of the skills that we offer here today, deep breathing and visualization, work best if if you practice them often, preferably daily, so that you become confident in your ability to use these skills, because research has shown us time and time again that the skills you tend to fall back on are those that you feel confident in using. We really don't want you to have to think it through in the middle of a crisis situation. We just want you to use it. And to do that, you have to be very confident in that skill. So the last thing that we work on in every session, really, we want to explore how will these skills that we teach really work for you. So each week, we're going to be giving you the opportunity to create an action plan so that you can practice the skills learned in that week's session. So why do we go to this problem? Why do we do all of this? Well, the reality is if you just attend these sessions and you only practice these skills during the session, you're not going to get much benefit from them. It's sort of like going to and watching an exercise video while sitting on your couch, right? Unless you get up and you actually do it, you don't get the benefit from the exercise program. And if you don't actually integrate and do and practice these skills in your day-to-day life, you're really not going to get the benefit from this program that you had hoped to when you signed up. So that said, what is an action plan and how do you actually use it? Well, action plan has a bunch of different steps. The first step is I'm going to ask you to pick one skill. I'm not going to have you practice all of the skills that we teach every week, because then you're going to quickly feel overwhelmed, and we recognize and respect the fact that you already have a busy life and you don't need a whole bunch of extra tasks from us. So we're going to have you pick one of the skills that we teach during the week. We're going to ask you to set a deadline and be realistic in that deadline. So when are you going to start it? What do you expect from it? Right? We're going to ask you why this one. What is the motivation behind the one that you picked? The more real you can make it, the more personalized you can make it, the more likely you are to use it as a motivation. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I say I'm going to do deep breathing, and I say, well, I'm doing deep breathing because it only takes a minute and it's the one that everybody said was the best. All right. It is an okay motivation. But if I tell myself the reason I picked deep breathing is because yesterday I got so angry and I almost said something I knew was going to be hurtful to the person that I'm caring for. And I can't do that. You can hear it in my voice. You can hear the reasoning and how strong it is. It's going to be much more likely to encourage you to do a daily practice of deep breathing. So the more personalized you can make that motivation, the more likely it is you're going to do it. The next step is, what are you going to pair it with? So what we know just behaviorally, in all of the psychology research that shows us how do you establish a new habit. If you can pair it with something you already do, say every morning you have a cup of coffee, right? And you already have that habit well established. You're never going to skip that cup of coffee because, that's what makes me survive for the rest of the day. Then maybe while you're watching the pot drip, while you're watching the coffee maker make the coffee, that's a perfect time to practice your deep breathing because you're there every morning watching for that first cup of coffee, right? It's something you already do. Same thing with visualization. You have a routine before you go to bed. Maybe you watch the news, then you take a shower, then you brush your teeth, then you get your pajamas on, and then you lay in bed. Maybe you read, maybe you don't. If you can add your visualization to that in that routine already, it's much more likely to happen because you're already in the path and it just goes with the flow. So it's easier to make sure you're consistent if you already pair it with something you're consistently doing. So the optional step of breaking it down happens when you have something that's a little bit more complicated. If you think about the visualization, right? I give you a script. Well, it's really hard to read the script and do the visualization at the same time, right? Because you're interrupting the process. I'm opening my eyes, reading the script, closing my eyes and thinking about it. So maybe one of the steps that you are going to have would be to figure out either how to make a recording, figure out how you're going to maybe use this video, maybe find something on YouTube that's a visualization you enjoy. Either way, that's an extra step in this goal process for you. If you do this, then I'm going to encourage you to set a deadline for that. So I'm going to go find a recording or a video on YouTube, and I'm going to do that and have it ready to go by tomorrow night. Much more likely to happen than if you just say, well, I guess I'll go look on video for something. I'll go look on YouTube for something. Well, when are you going to do it? If you don't give yourself a goal, it's unlikely to happen. The next step is reminders. It's really important to set yourself up reminders when you start a new habit, because you're not already consciously thinking about it, that you're going to add it to your schedule. So whether you go the electronic route and use your smartphone and send yourself reminders, or perhaps you are old school and you have Post-it notes that you leave on the mirror, or you put it on the door before you go out, or whatever reminder you use, right? It can be, if you go with that coffee thing in the morning, you may have a coffee mug that says breathe on it. So every time you pick up and make your coffee with that in the morning, you say, hey, that reminds me to breathe. Some people still use the string around a finger or string around a wrist. Whatever helps you to remember to do these activities until they become a habit is really important. And finally, what happens when you run into the problems, right? There will be problems. There are going to be barriers. You may say, I'm going to practice deep breathing every day. And then you get 4 days in and you realize you did it the first day. And then that's it. Well, you have to first figure out what the issue is. Why didn't you do it the next day? What happened? And then maybe the time you thought was perfect isn't really perfect. You think you sit and you spend time on your coffee, you don't realize that you get constantly interrupted. It's really hard to do something, concentrate on something when you're constantly interrupted. So maybe you need to find a different time of the day, right? So ID the issue, brainstorm on how you can fix it, and then try out your brainstorm solutions. And then if that doesn't work, go back to the beginning, maybe go back to another brainstorm or another solution that you thought of, try that out until you find a way to make it work. So now let's go ahead, pull out a pen and paper, and let's do this together. Go ahead and pick one. Are you going to do deep breathing or are you going to do visualization? Write it at the top of the paper. Okay. The next step, set your deadline and be realistic, right? If you don't think you can spend 5 minutes a day on visualization this week, then when are you going to do it? Right? So give yourself a start date and kind of set a timeline for yourself. How often are you going to do this? What time of day are you going to do it? That kind of thing. So I'll give you a moment to do that. Next thing, I want you to write down why this one. What is your personal motivation? Why did you pick deep breathing? Why did you pick visualization? Remembering the more personalized you can make this, the more likely it is that you're going to actually do these things and use it to motivate yourself. Go ahead and write that down. Okay, next step, what are you going to pair it with? So what do you already do all the time? What's 1 or 2 consistent things that you do? Do you go on a daily walk? Do you have that cup of coffee first thing in the morning? Do you have a bedtime routine? Think about the things you do every day. Which is best to pair it with? So go ahead and write down, what are you going to pair it with? I'm not going to have you walk through the break it down. I'll leave that for you guys to do depending on which one you pick. For instance, the visualization, we've talked already about how to break that down. So I'll leave to do that on your own time. The final thing I'm going to have you do is the reminder. How are you going to remind yourself to do these things? Right? And there's nothing wrong with combining both electronic and physical methods. You can do just physical, you can do just electronic. Go ahead and write down how you're going to remind yourself to do this every day. Okay, so that's your first action plan. You should be aware that at the beginning of the next session, we do review our action plans that people have set up. If you find yourself running into a barrier and you're not really sure why you're running into a barrier, please feel free or feel comfortable to bring that up during the check-in session. That is really what that check-in session is all about. It's not about checking up on you as much as it's just making sure that you have all the tools you need to integrate these skills into your life. So that said, we're going to talk next about access to the website. So I am going to go ahead and I am going to switch over to the computer share. This is our website, and the reason I'm talking about that, you can access it at CaregiverTLC.net. Type it in the URL, bring it up, go to participants. You'll see it asks you for a passcode. The passcode is CARE or CARE. So go ahead, hit submit once you type in CARE, and that's going to bring you to our participants only website. As you can see, it starts out with a little brief welcome that explains what the program is. You have an overview and timeline that goes through the step-by-step what to expect. The workshop overview has a brief description of all 6 sessions. What I really like to focus on today is the material section. You scroll down until you come into the words material. You have a participant guide. Hopefully you should have a hard copy already. If you do not have a hard copy, you can download it here. Let your facilitator know you haven't received a hard copy yet, and they'll talk to the research team and make sure you get a hard copy. But until then, you can download the guide and look at it on your computer or on your smartphone. You also have access to the workshop slides. And this is just a kind of a quick slide by slide so that you can take a look at what's available to PDF and not a PowerPoint, so that you can see it if you don't have PowerPoint. You also, just by going down a little bit, you see the session handouts. There are by session different handouts that you can download individually. So let's say you go ahead and you use the mapping your stress, but you notice a couple weeks later, maybe you can't find it or you want to do it again. You can go ahead and download it again, print it up and use it again. So, and this is all the different handouts by session. So it should be pretty easy to find. And next there are the resources, and these are separated. These are completely optional if you want to know more information about different sections. Say if you want to know more information about deep breathing, you can go into the session 1, strategies for stress, and then go ahead and read up more about it. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's available. There are different links to articles, to academic articles, to videos like TED Talks or YouTube videos that can help explain more. There are apps that are on here, like the Calm app, or Headspace, I believe is there as well. Our 10% Happier should be there. There are books that are available that if you're more interested in the topic, want to learn more about it, all of those resources are on here, and this will take you maybe next week or the following session. I will go ahead and I'll explore more of those with you. But for now, what I really wanted to highlight were the material section and where you can find these on the website. So hopefully you found this valuable, and we will see you next week, or the next session is called Dealing with the Blues. So have a great week, and please feel free to contact your facilitator if you have any questions about the material that is shared today or the material that is on the website. Have a great week. Bye-bye.